The longer that I have been in business, the more I've realized just how many of us are neurospicy. I am Amanda Warfield. I'm a simplicity focused content marketing strategist and copywriter, and I am on a mission to help course creators and online educators simplify their marketing so that they can make a bigger impact in less time. And I go live here on this channel every single Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 4 p.m. Pacific Time. Sometimes it's by myself, sometimes it's with a guest, but if you get on my email list, you'll always know ahead of time what I will be sharing about. Today, I want to share tips for those of us that are ADHD or neurospicy and are running our own businesses. We can tend to fall into some really great patterns when we are neurospicy or ADHD and we run our own business. We can also fall into some really big traps because there are a ton of gifts to having ADHD that come with it, and there are a ton of things that we can struggle with. And I think entrepreneurship is really attractive to those of us that are a little neurospicy because um, we have the freedom and flexibility to make it what we need it to be, which is so great. But I shared on my Instagram account yesterday and I asked for all of my friends with ADHD to share their best tips for other entrepreneurs with ADHD. So if you are watching this live, I would love for you to share in the chat actually what your top tips are for if you struggle with ADHD or have ADHD and you have some tips. I would love for you to share them. And if you are watching the replay of this, drop them in the comments below and share so that we can all learn from each other. So I'm going to share what my friends on Instagram had to say about their best tips. And then I've also got some of my own tips that I would love to share as well. But just general disclaimer, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a therapist. I'm just here to share some tips that have worked for me and that others have seen work for themselves. And that's all. So, okay, first things first. Maria said to set focus timers. And this one actually, um, oh, I thought someone else said it, but maybe not. But yes, time limits. Someone else said to set time limits. Maria said set focus timers. And this is one that I do constantly. If I don't set timers, I really, really struggle with my work. So I'm going to get a little deeper into how I use timers in my own business to help with what I'm working on. But Maria, thank you for that. Setting focus timers is so helpful. Michelle said to make lists of what you need to do and prioritize them and then set time limits. I know that this is so, so helpful. So thank you, Michelle, for sharing this. I think this also can go really well with what Mara shared, which is to use Goblin tools to break tasks down um, into tinier pieces. And this tool is so stinking cool. I'm actually going to share. I hadn't heard of this until Mara had actually shared this in my. Let me get rid of this so that you can see it with me. But until Mara had shared this with me on Instagram, I had never heard of this, and I was losing my mind about this earlier. I think it's so cool. So Goblin Tools has all kinds of things. It's got magic to-do list, formalizer, judge, professor, estimator, compiler, chef. I'll kind of go over really quickly, but basically chef is here's what I have, here are my ingredients, here's the time, they're AI tools, right? Compiler is here's a bunch of brain thoughts, or here's a bunch of thoughts I have, here's my brain dump, turn it into tasks for me. Estimator is how long is this activity going to take? Professor, give me a crash course, enter something here and then explain it to me with an example. Judge is, am I misreading the tone of this? So you can say, here's the text I'm sending, and then judge it, and it'll tell you like how your text comes across. And then I think this one's really fun. You can take your spicy thoughts and turn them into either more professional, more technical, more accessible, more polite, less snarky, easier to read, blah, 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 all these different things. I just think it's also fun. But then Magic To-Do List, which I believe is the one that Mara was really specifically talking about, is it breaks down your to-dos, because as important it is for those of us with ADHD, right? The site is incredible. For those of us with ADHD or that struggle with having things on our to-do list and then looking at them and feeling really overwhelmed, this is so key. So let's see, what is a great example? Shani, since you're here live and I can see you in the chat, I'm going to use something for your business. Let's say create new fall themed sticker kit. What you can do here is you can say how spicy you need it to be. So either you need it to not be broken down that much or broken down even more. I'm going to leave it in the middle just for the sake of this example, but you type in what you need. So I put create new fall themed sticker kit and add. Then you come over to it and there's this little wand and you click it and it breaks it down for you. What you can also do is there are 3 dots there, and it also has the ability to estimate how much time these things are going to take. And so you can estimate the full project, create new fall theme sticker kit. It says it's going to estimate 3 hours. But then you can also go into each individual one. So that gave me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like 15 steps. For each of those steps, I can tell it to break it down further and estimate each individual step. And so it tells me things like define the overall theme and color palette for the fall sticker kit, brainstorm ideas for different sticker designs to fit the fall theme, create rough sketches, select the most appealing designs. Like it breaks down that task. So let's say, okay, right here it says plan a marketing, I don't want to check it off, plan a marketing strategy for promoting the fall theme sticker kit. I'm going to tell it to break that one down further. Let's see what it says. And it's thinking. Okay, and it gives me so many. Oh my gosh, that's so many more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Another 14 or 15 steps just for that one. So review the features and design, identify the target audience, research current trends, develop key messaging, determine the market channels, so on and so forth. So that was Mara's tip, was to use that. Golden. I've never heard of it. I'm going to use this all the time now because I'm really bad about doing that to myself, where I'll say, okay, work on this thing. And then it's like, okay, but what do I need to do? And then I get overwhelmed. So make that list. And if you need help making that list and setting those time limits, use Goblin Tools. Just Google Goblin Tools and it'll come up. Now, Sandra said to work when your mind will thrive instead of trying to force a schedule that leaves you struggling. And I think this one is such a great tip too. I'm going to go into details about exactly how I've done that in my own business, and then you can use that for what you will. But I think that's something that we naturally crave, and that's why we naturally kind of move into entrepreneurship when we are ADHD or neurospicy or whatever. But I don't think we also don't tend to give ourselves the grace at first either. We start working because we like the idea of the freedom that being an entrepreneur gives us, and yet we can sometimes force ourselves to try and stick to what we're used to and certain work hours and different things like that. So I think that is a really important tip too. Kate said that accountability is huge, even if it's just AI talking through ideas with someone, which I haven't tried AI yet to do that, but I think that's really cool. And I think I can definitely see how you could do that. If you've got this idea that you want to brainstorm using AI to help you do that, I could see how that could be really, really helpful, so that it's not just you in a chamber. What is that called? When you echo chamber, that's the word, echo chamber, not just you in an echo chamber. So again, for those of you that are here live, that are watching this live, if you have any great tips, go ahead and share them in the chat. Those were all the ones from my friends over on Instagram that they shared with me yesterday. And if you're watching the replay, share yours in the comments. I'm getting ready. I know we have at least one tip in the chat right now that I'm going to share, and then I'm going to move into my own tips and how I've made some of these work in my own business. So meant to hit the send button last night. Football distracted me. I get that. I was going to say creating a block schedule. Yes, having a time block schedule can be so helpful. And I'm going to talk about how I've used that in my business too. So that's awesome. Okay, so when it comes to those of us with ADHD, we tend to struggle with focusing, time management, and organization, right? Which the more I learn about ADHD, the more I'm like, oh, I used to think, oh, I'm so organized. And really what I've done is I've created systems. I'm not really, I mean, and I'm not naturally organized, I should say, but I've learned how to create systems for myself that make sense. Um, they don't always make sense with the way systems make sense in my husband's head, which causes conflict sometimes between the two of us. Where bless him, he's just given up and said, "Where is this thing?" Because he knows that the system makes sense in my head. Um, but I used to think, "Oh, I'm so organized," and I've learned, like, "Oh, this wasn't a natural skill. It's something that I had to teach myself in systems." Anyways, we'll get to that. But we are really gifted with problem solving and creativity and um, energy. Typically, I'm not so much with that one, but typically with energy and problem solving and creativity. So, with time management, a couple of things that I've done to really help with my own time management as an entrepreneur and as a course creator who is not only having to run a business where I'm serving clients, but I'm also running this whole other side of my business where I'm educating and I'm teaching and I've got a membership and I'm constantly increasing, not increasing, but creating content for that membership and serving my membership really, really well. We have calls every single week. I've got a whole shop full of items, right? So it's not I'm doing all of these different things in my business, is what I'm trying to say there. And I'm able to do that because of some of these different things that I've done to really help myself as an entrepreneur. So, time management, routines, time blocking, and alarms are three things that I have done that really, really, really help my focus. And again, like Sandra said, um, working with yourself and working with your mind and with your body, that's a huge part of this. So I know that personally, I work really well in the mornings. And as the day goes on, my focus, it's harder and harder for me to focus. Um, this 4 o'clock p.m. time period for me actually is kind of the worst. Like 12 p.m. to like 5:30, I'm not very productive. So I don't really try to get a lot of work done during that time period because I just know that that's not going to happen. So, anyways, working with yourself and creating routines for yourself that are realistic and manageable and that are natural with your own body's rhythms and your brain's rhythms, that's going to be really helpful in this. So, my daily routine looks like getting up. I usually get up about 4:30, which again, I'm not saying that anyone else should get up at 4:30. I don't think there's like gotta get up early and like eat that frog or whatever it's called. I don't think that's what's necessary, but I do think that it's necessary to know what works for you. And for me, that works. So I get up at 4:30, I work for a few hours. Um, and then I have um a little bit of time to get ready and then I go to my other job, my side hustle. And then it depends on the day how that looks, but sometimes I come back and I do a little bit more work, sometimes I don't. But I know that getting up and first thing in the morning doing my work is actually the best thing for my brain. Also, looking at my routines within the week. So, like I said, every day doesn't look the same. And even when I was full time only working in my business, every day didn't look the same. I would block out my days. And so for me right now, Mondays is client work. So I only work from home on Mondays. That is the day that this is my day for just my business. And I take client calls on Mondays. I do client work on Mondays. Like that is my big client day. Tuesdays, I work on my membership. And so that's the day that I'm working on my membership. On Wednesdays, that is the day I'm working on any projects that I have currently going on. And that can look like many different things. Right now, I'm working on turning um, a challenge that I did this summer that got a ton of love, content planning bootcamp. Um, I'm working on turning that evergreen. And so that's my project right now. But there's always some project that I'm working on because even though I have clients, I'm trying to continually improve my education side of my business, right? My course creation side of my business. And so making sure I have a day for that is so important. Thursday is always admin work. And then because I work at a church. Friday and Saturday are my weekend, and then Sunday is my marketing day. So every single day that I'm working has a specific theme, and that is a routine that I have so that I know when I sit down on any given day what I'm supposed to be working on, which that routine really helps my brain know, okay, this is what we're focusing on, right? So I've got the routine. I've got time blocks in place as well where I know, okay, I'm going to work instead of saying, so some people, let me back up. Some people will say, okay, I'm going to set aside X amount of time to work on said task. I like to instead say, I'm going to set aside X amount of time to work on a specific theme, and whatever I get done in that time, I get done. I have found that for myself that if I am trying to finish something in a certain amount of time, one, I'm not very good at estimating that. Maybe with this goblin tool, I would be able to, but I'm not very good at estimating how much time something's going to take. And so I end up frustrated and thinking I can finish something when I just really can't. And some days I'm more focused than others, which also affects how quickly something gets done. So instead, I say, okay, here's a 2 hour chunk of time. That tends to be, I'll get to this a bit more with the Pomodoro method, but that tends to be kind of what okay, 2 hour blocks where, okay, this 2 hour block is for clients. This 2 hour block is for this 2 hour blocks for this, and working in those 2 hour blocks. And it's more of a do a work block on X thing versus, okay, well, now go work on this task for this amount of time. The other thing, alarms. I know, like I said, Maria said set focus timers. I use studywithme.io right now, but honestly, I used to use just alarms on my phone. I would set alarms for every 25 minutes, and then I would put my phone down and walk away. Using timers, though, for focusing while I'm working, so those 25 minutes, which again, I'll talk about more when I get to the Pomodoro method, but also just for different things throughout the day so that if I get hyper focused on something, I don't lose track of time and I know when to stop. And so if I know, okay, I need to leave the house by a certain time, I will set an alarm for right before I need to leave or when I need to leave, about 5 minutes before I need to leave. And then also for whatever time I need to stop what I'm doing to transition and to get ready. So I'll set a couple different alarms in that case, in case I get hyper focused and just kind of go down rabbit holes, right? That also helps with the time. It's not called time blindness. Time blindness is something else that a lot of people with ADHD struggle with, but just that feeling where like, okay, I need to go do this later and I don't want to forget about it. And so I don't want to start anything. And that whole process that we can get stuck in. Timers help with that, and they help me feel more comfortable allowing myself to not worry so much about the upcoming thing. Shani said, all these tips are things I do as well because it helps with the decision fatigue and decrease the day-to-day decisions I need to make. Yes, absolutely. Anything I can do to help with decisions and decision fatigue, that is always my goal, which a lot of the organization things that I'm going to talk about, that's what it's all geared towards, is like, how do I decrease decision fatigue? And if that looks like, and this is a personal side of things, not business, but that's like, if that means eating the same lunch all week long, I will do that so I don't have to think about it. Or if that means, okay, every single Wednesday I'm going to work on projects, then great. Like anything I can do to say, okay, one less thing to think about. So those are some of my best time management tips that I've done. Focusing. First things first is that Pomodoro method that I've mentioned a few times. This is not my method. Some people call it the tomato method, but it basically is, the science says that an adult can only focus for about 20-ish minutes on any given task before we start getting distracted. So what I do is I set an alarm for 25 minutes, gives me a little time to actually get back into the flow of rhythm. I set an alarm for 25 minutes. It goes off. I say, hey Siri, set an alarm for 5 minutes. And I do that on my watch. And then I go off and I walk laps around my house. Sometimes I pick up things. I try not to do anything with my brain, mentally though. It's like, okay, here's this thing that needs to go in the bathroom. Let me, as I walk past the bathroom, put it down, things like that. And then I come back down and I sit back down refreshed. and clearer minded because I've stepped away and I've come back. Um, this isn't a time to pick up your phone. I know if I'm doing that, like, bad news. Um, and you just don't want to get sucked into other things. So this is really a time to just step away, step right back, and then you do 4 blocks for a full 2-hour set essentially. And then sorry, I got distracted by the comment in the chat. You do those 4 blocks, about 2 hours of work, and honestly, you'd be surprised at how much work you can get done, and then you can feel good about like, okay, now I can go redirect my attention somewhere else, and maybe that means you do a different type of work block, or maybe you go work on laundry, or you go run errands, or whatever that may look like. Shani said, I need to be better about actually walking away from my breaks. I've noticed I will just reset the time and keep working. When I get into those ruts, what I will do is I will set the alarm on my phone and I will put my phone across the room so that I'm physically forced to walk away, and it really breaks that concentration. Um, Putting my phone away is also another tip I have for focus, is just like sometimes I will find myself struggling to focus, and so I'll pick up my phone and scroll, and then I'll put it back down, and I'll try really hard to focus, and I can't, so I'll pick up my phone. So when I get caught up in that rut, I will take my phone and I will literally go stick it in a drawer like across the room, so that I can't see it. Which apparently studies have shown that just like being able to see your phone like on the desk, even if you're not touching it, is distracting, which is crazy to me. Makes sense, but it's just wild. So yeah, that is another tip I have, is like literally putting your phone up, using it for the alarm, and then putting it across the room so that it forces you to get up and walk away and break that concentration. So Pomodoro method is one that super helpful for me, like forcing me to focus and then forcing me to pull back out, because what I will do is I will start hyper focusing and I will wear myself out quickly, because I will sit there and I will hyper focus for an hour or 2 hours, and then I've used all of my mental capacity for the entire day in that 2-hour period because I didn't give myself those natural breaks. Okay, so then minimizing overwhelm. We've talked about that in a few ways now. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I have it in my notes, but I feel like we kind of like touched on that a bit already. It's just like anything you can do to minimize overwhelm, minimize decision fatigue, like keeping your space clean. Yeah, I don't know what else I was thinking there, so that might be good there. Batching, though. Batching is something that, if you're new around here, I talk about all the time. I wrote a book about batching. I cannot more highly suggest batching. Now, what I typically teach is content batching. I've got an entire course on how to create a content batching system for yourself that will work. But batching itself is super ADHD friendly because it helps you hyper focus on something, right? It works with that part of your brain that naturally wants to hyper focus and says, okay, well, hyper focus on this one thing. And so then when you continue to hyper focus on something, you don't feel bad because you went down a rabbit hole, because it's what you were supposed to be doing. So batching content, but also just batching your work in general, which is again why I tend to work with themed routine days instead of, well, here's just my to-do list. What do I want to start with, or what's the highest priority? Because for me, if I just go, what's the highest priority, then I get stuck in rabbit holes and I hyper focus too much. But if I go, okay, I'm going to touch on every aspect of my business throughout the week, I know that at some point those high priorities are getting touched. And it's okay if I go down a rabbit hole and I hyper focus on batching out emails, or batching out sending guest pitches, or batching out, what else do I work on? Batching out creating new shop items, different things like that. So batching out what I'm working on, just it helps with that hyper focus. So not just with content batching, but batching anything. And then giving yourself rabbit hole time. Okay, this is the big one for me. Self-care and boundaries is really important, especially as someone with ADHD, you have to know when you need to walk away, right? Like you've got to be able to listen to your body and understand when your body is saying, I need a break. Like today is a Monday. I'm supposed to work on client work all day today. I could not focus. Couldn't do it. couldn't do it. And so I recognized, okay, this is just probably not this my body, my brain is telling me I need a break. Realistically, I've worked a lot lately. We've had a lot of events happening with my other job, and I have been working a ton and I've been really tired. And my brain decided, okay, we need a break. So having those boundaries and being able to listen to your body is so hard. It's so hard, but it's so important. Um, and so doing that, but then within your boundaries, also recognizing when you just need time to work on, like, to have a rabbit hole with your business. Like, what I really try hard not to do is work at all on Fridays, and especially not Friday nights. Friday nights are supposed to be, it's the night that my husband has, um, he's got a standing date with his friends where they play video games together every single Friday night, right? That is supposed to be my night to introvert and to be alone and to do what I need to do, to play my own video games, to read, whatever it is I want to do, right? However, there are some Friday nights where I just really need to have rabbit hole time. And there's, something about my business that I'm really excited about or I really want to work on. Not because I feel like I have to, but because I want to. And for a long time, I struggled with this idea that, okay, I've set boundaries and so I can't break them at all. I'm a really black and white thinker, clearly, like really, really, really hard sometimes to break out of that. But giving myself that grace and that, yes, it's okay if you want to go down a rabbit hole with whatever project it is you're working on. That's okay. Or for the new project you want to play around with, or a course that you want to take, like those things are okay to give yourself that rabbit hole time as long as it doesn't become, oh, I have to work on these things. So that is something for focus. Chasing the dopamine. Yes, I love that. Yes, having to lean into that dopamine and chasing the dopamine. I do think it's so important if you are neurospicy to allow yourself that time and to not feel guilty for doing it, because that's something that I struggled with a lot and sometimes still do, where I'm like, oh, but I shouldn't be, quote unquote, working right now. I should be relaxing. But realistically, honestly, sometimes that is just relaxing for me. If there's this course I really want to work on or really want to create or I really want to update this offer, like sometimes it's just good and I should be doing that. So, okay, that's another focus thing that really helps with that. And let's be real, like sometimes that dopamine, like your brain's not going to stop thinking about chasing it until you chase it. And so if you don't provide yourself that outlet for it, you're going to have a hard time focusing on your other work too. So that's what some of this stuff for me is, like giving myself the ability, like doing what I need to do outside of work time, typical work time, I guess I should say, to allow myself the ability to focus, right? Um, okay, what were the other things? Self-care and boundaries. Oh, delegating and outsourcing. This is something that I've really naturally leaned into. And so I think it's something that some of us may naturally lean into already, just that idea of delegating and outsourcing. And when there's something that you know needs to get done, but you're not excited about it, if you can recognize, okay, like it's not going to happen, who can I find for help? Like that is so important. For example, my podcast editing was the first thing I ever outsourced, and it is not cheap, but it's the easiest money I spend in my business because I know that if it was left to me, I would not do it. And yet I know how important it is that my podcast goes out consistently every single week for my people, right? If I wasn't paying for it, I'm at like episode 230 something of my podcast, right? If I wasn't paying for this editor, it would not happen. It would not go out. I would not have over 200 episodes. And these episodes are how people learn about me. It's how they learn about the shop products I have, the courses I have, how they learn about working with me one on one. Just, it's how they connect with me. And that was something that I knew right away. If I didn't outsource it, it wasn't going to happen. And I think we naturally can fall into that of just like, I don't like doing it, so I don't want to do it, so I'm not going to do it. But giving yourself that permission to, I think a lot of times when people, the advice given for outsourcing is find something that's going to bring you ROI right away. And honestly, podcast editing didn't. I still don't know if it does, to be honest, like, if I get a one-to-one ROI out of it, but let me tell you, it keeps my podcast happening, and that's enough for me. So, I'm not saying just throw your money at anything and everything you don't like doing, but something to think about. It's okay to pay for help and to ask for that help and to say, "Okay, I'm ready to move on." And this doesn't fill my cup. Sometimes there's just things that, like, you're never gonna get to, and you're never gonna do them because you don't wanna do them. Okay, accountability is my last focus thing. This one I have discovered recently. I think I've shared this on my podcast before, but I basically won't invest in memberships anymore that don't have accountability built into them. And I mean like real legitimate accountability. For example, with Changeable Marketing, the community, we have a weekly call. We have a call every single week, and that is a chance and it's not guest educators and it's not more education. It's a weekly call to work on your stuff and to be held accountable to, hey, you said you were working on this thing. How's that going? Right? What questions do you have about this? What help do you need right now? It the calls each week, sometimes it's silent co-working, sometimes it's office hours, but what it boils down to is each and every week it is a chance to plug in and to have just that group community around you to say, "Oh yeah, you were working on this thing. How's it going?" And to focus yourself and get that accountability. Um, there was a long period of time where memberships were basically just like extended courses almost, and there was a time and place for that, for sure, where we were like where I liked having all that education, but now I'm at the point where if I'm gonna be part of a community and I'm gonna pay for a membership, it's gonna have that accountability built into it because having that accountability just makes it so that you're so much more likely to focus on those goals that you have for yourself. For example, one of the memberships I'm a part of, it's called Big Break Club, and their name might have actually changed. When I will link to it in the description later because it's so good. If you're looking to learn how to run paid ads, it's very important. It's great. They have 2 calls every single week. I can only make one of them, but they have 2 calls every single week where you can just hop in and say, "Here's what I'm working on. Here's what I need help with." A lot of times lately, it has been like I pop in, I'm like, "I actually don't need help with anything, and I don't really have any questions, but this is just a chance for me to hold myself accountable to working on whatever thing." So earlier I mentioned that I'm turning a challenge evergreen. The reason I'm turning it evergreen is so I can run ads to it, right? Um, with running ads to it, I can't start running those ads to it until I have it evergreen. And so I show up to those calls every single week and they're like, "What do you have questions on?" And sometimes like, "I'm just here to listen." And then while I'm listening, I'm working on that goal that I have for myself. And so I'm holding myself accountable by simply showing up. So, anyways, accountability, so key. And a really great way to help focus, right? Because you're live with someone, you're sitting there, you have to show up. It's like a meeting, but more low key. And so I know that, okay, at this time each week, I'm going to be working on this thing. Even if it's not my normal day to work on projects, it's like a bonus period. Okay, so the last thing that we can struggle with is organization. Um, CRMs, client relationship management tools, are you need them. If you are working with clients, I really love HoneyBook. I recommend it so much. I use it not only for all of my client stuff, I also use it for all of my guest interviews. So every guest that comes through my YouTube channel, my podcast, they are like their forms, everything. It's all in an automation through HoneyBook, my CRM tool. Project management tools. I am through and through a pen and paper planner girl, right? I've got my planner, I've got my checklist. I love these. I am a pen and paper planner girl. Even my content planner, right? Pen and paper. However, the pen and paper is secondary to my project management tool. So I use ClickUp, Trello, Asana. There's so many out there. That really houses my business brain. is inside of my project management tool. And then I'm able to use my pen and paper for just my to-do list, essentially. Like, okay, what do I need to get done and check off? But I'm able to keep everything I need to keep, from links to notes to information, inside of my project management tool, so that it's all in one place. And it's easily accessible, I think. My husband's helping me in my business a little bit more so now. And earlier today, he told me that he didn't understand the way I have things organized. So it works for my brain. But that's all you needed to work for right now, right? You need to work for your brain so that everything's organized. And it's so nice to be able to just go, okay, I need this affiliate link. Let me go into this part of my ClickUp. Here's my affiliate links. Here's this. Or I want to work on this course. Okay. Inside of ClickUp, I've got all of my education and all of my, um, I broke my thing. All of my login information for all of my courses and the links to log in, so I'm not having to dive through my inbox. Shani said, same. The pen and paper is helpful to bring things back to the front of mind. Oh, that's a really good way to put it. Yes. I find that I fall into the out of sight, out of mind 1,000,000%. 1,000,000%. So what I like to do is I like to house everything there in my project management tool, and then like back to the front of the mind. That's such a good way to put that. Everything goes in here. And I put everything in here from like, all of the important things I need to remember for today, all of my calls for today, my little reminders for myself, what specific things I'm working on this week or specifically working on today versus all the things I could be working on is kind of how it gets broken down. Okay. And then automations and systems. Automations are things that you kind of do once and then you don't have to do again. So Pinterest, for example, like my Pinterest is almost fully automated at this point because I have a system in place where we create the pins for each episode, and then they get uploaded and scheduled out for like months and months at a time, right? And so my Pinterest stays automated. Say like the act of the pins going live months later, that's an automation because it gets scheduled for months out, and then I don't have to think about it. The system in place, though, supports that automation because if I don't have the system to, okay, I've created my podcast episode and now I'm creating all my graphics, and part of creating my graphics for each podcast episode includes creating my Pinterest graphics. And when I create my Pinterest graphics, I automatically add them into Plan, and then from Plan I schedule, like, that part is the system, and that system supports the automation, or maybe the automation supports the system. You get what I mean, though. Where they work together to keep my Pinterest going and feeding itself for months at a time. I'm not thinking about Pinterest 99% of the time, right? Once a month I think about Pinterest and then I don't think about it again, but yet it's continuously putting new content out for me. But even so, systems can have to do with automation, and automation's great. Things like, again, within HoneyBook, setting up those automations so that when someone fills out this thing, this gets sent to them. 1 week before their interview, this email gets sent to them. And these are things I don't have to do. It just happens naturally without me having to do it myself. But also systems as far as, okay, here's my batching system. I know that every time I'm going to work on content batching, I'm going to do it in this order. Here's my system for all mine are content related. What are other systems I have? I know I have 10 million. I'm at the point where I have so many systems that I don't even know they're systems, I feel like. Systems. Well, like I have a system for the way I go to the grocery store, right? Like the way I walk through the grocery store, I always start on the right with the fruits and veggies, and then I go around to the meat and the dairy, and then I come back and then I'll go through the middle aisles as needed, right? Like I have a system for the way I work through it. And so I have a system for the way that I create new offers. I start with this and then I move to this. Anyways, so systems in place can be really, really helpful as well, especially for things that you're going to do often or often enough on any kind of regular basis. I have a system with my clients, right? Like pretty much no matter who the client is, our calls look pretty much all the same because I've got a system in place and we go through the system on all of our calls. Um, okay, I think that's all the tips that I've written down. However, I have one more tip. All of that being said, those of us with ADHD, we struggle with focus and organization and time management. And systems and structures can be really, really helpful. However, sometimes you have to throw it all out the window and you have to just do something different and shake things up in order to focus better. So sometimes when nothing's working, I cannot focus, I'm doing all of my tips and tricks, nothing's helping, I go work somewhere else. I pick up and just walking into the dining room and working at the dining room table can help me focus. Sometimes it means leaving the house and going and getting work done. Sometimes my brain just needs to have no structure. So sometimes if your brain is like, that's cool, you've given me all this structure, now I'm going to rebel against it, that's normal too. And sometimes you just need to do that. So having backup plans in your mind for things like, okay, if I can't focus, how can I slightly change things up so that I can focus easier is going to be really helpful. Okay. I think this is the longest any of my lives have gone so far. If you have any suggestions, I would love to hear them. I would like to incorporate them into my own life as a business owner. I feel like there's probably 10 million more I could think of, but I wanted to give a quick overview today, and I'm sure this will be a topic that we dive into more and more. Just because it's something that I find so interesting and also that I live day to day. And I think that a lot of us entrepreneurs do. So if you have any tips for other ADHD entrepreneurs in making their life easier, making their business life easier, let us know in the comments. And yeah. If you are looking for accountability, come join us inside of the community. Like I said, we have calls every single Tuesday morning. And it's a really great way to get invested in a community. It's $27 a month. Get invested in a community that will have your back and that will hold you accountable and give you a chance each week. If you're like, the only time I get focused work on my project right now is through this call each week, then that's great. That's an hour each week at least. Sometimes our calls are 2 hours. But it's at least an hour each week to get focused work done. So for some of those things that you're trying to do to move the needle outside of your regular and your norm. So if you're looking for community, Chase Simple Marketing, the community is a great place to start. Head to amandawarfield.com/community. I'll link to it down in the description as well. But I'd love to see you in there. And like I said, we have a call every single Tuesday morning. Afternoon for those of you in the Eastern time zone. And that is it. So if you want more from this series, if you'd like to see more videos like this, let me know in the comments as well. And otherwise, I will see you next Monday, same time, same place, for another episode with a special guest.